Here I've opened the friend detail view model. In the load async method, we use already the friend data service to get a friend by ID. The friend detail view model gets that friend data service as a constructor parameter. Now in our onSaveExecute method, we also use the data service to save the friend back to the database. So let's go to that iFriend data service interface and let's define a saveAsync method. So here I just create a method that returns a task as it is async and I call it saveAsync. As a parameter, the method just takes a friend instance. Now let's go to the friend data service and let's say here implement interface so that we have that saveAsync method in this class. Now here we actually need to save the friend by using Entity Framework. As you might remember, this friend data service takes a func that returns a friend organizer DB context. It stores this func in this context creator field. So we can call this func in our saveAsync method to get the DB context. So I create a using block here and I call the context creator func to get the DB context. Now we can use the context to save the friend. The first thing, we need to attach the friend to the context, so that the context is aware of this instance. Now the context knows the friend, but it is unmodified. So let's grab the entry for that friend instance and let's set the state property of that entry to modified. Now the context is aware that this friend instance has changed. So now we can call the saveChangesAsync method on the context. And we should await this method, and so we need to make our saveAsync method async. Now we are done with the implementation here. We can go back to our friend detail view model, and in the onSaveExecute method, we can use that data service in its new saveAsync method. We just pass in the friend that we have in the friend property. As this method is async, we need to await it, and we need to make our onSaveExecute method async as well. Now let's see what happens when we save a friend. I select myself and I add my second name. Now I hit the save button and it looks like nothing happened because the navigation didn't refresh. Let's go to another friend and let's go back and you can see the second name has been stored, but the navigation didn't update. Let's see if we can see the update when we restart the application. Here we go, now you can see the second name also in the navigation. But actually, the navigation should update immediately after a friend has been saved. And this is what we do next. We use an event to notify the navigation view model after a friend has been saved. After we have called the saveAsync method on our friend data service, we need to notify the navigation view model about the updated friend. To do this, we add another event to our project. So I right-click on the event folder and I say Add Class. Let's call the class after friend saved event. Let's make it public and let's inherit from Prism's PubSub event class. As event arguments, I want to use a custom class that I call after friend saved event args. Now I press Ctrl dot and Visual Studio allows me to generate that class in the same file. I press Ctrl dot again to add a using directive for Prism events. And I clean up the unnecessary usings. Now let's think a bit, what do we need actually in the navigation view model to refresh the friend? We need the ID of the friend, so let's add a property here that we call ID. Beside the ID, the navigation view model needs the full name of the friend. So let's add another property here of type string, and I just call it displayMember. Now we have the after friend saved event class specified, and we can use it with Prism's event aggregator in the friend detail view model. So here, after we have called the saveAsync method on the friend data service, we use the event aggregator to get our new after friend saved event. On that event we call the publish method, and we need to specify new after friend saved event args. We set the ID property to the ID property of our friend. And we set the displayMember property to the full name of our friend, which is the friend's first name plus the friend's last name. Now we are already done with raising the event from the friend detail view model. Let's go now to the navigation view model and let's subscribe to that event. So here in the constructor, I use the event aggregator to get the after friend saved event. And I want to subscribe to it, and I call the method for the subscription just after friend saved. I press Ctrl- to generate that method in the navigation view model. Now when I scroll down a bit, you can see that the friends in this navigation view model are of type lookup_item. As you might remember, this lookup_item class has an ID and a display_member property. So now in the after_friend_saved method, we can use that friends property that contains the lookup items, and we can use the single extension method from the system link namespace. I grab the lookup item that has the ID that is equal to the ID of the after friend saved event args, and I just store it in a variable. Now we have the correct item, and we just need to update its display_member property to the display_member property that we have received from the event args. Let's see if this works. I select a friend and I add my second name here. I click the save button, but nothing happens. Let's add a breakpoint here in our after friend saved method. I hit the save button again and we see the breakpoint is hit. I press F10 and F10 again, and now we see the display_member property is set to Thomas Claudius Huber. When I press F5 to continue, we see that the navigation doesn't reflect the changes. The reason is the lookup_item class does not implement iNotify property changed, so the data binding is not notified when this display_member property gets a new value. Now let's implement this interface. Instead of implementing the iNotify property changed interface directly on this lookup_item class, I want to introduce a view model for the items in the navigation. So when you look at the navigation view model, you can see that we have here a friends property that is of type observable collection of lookup_item. But instead of using the lookup_item class here, I want to use a new class that I call navigation_item view model. I have already prepared this class in the view model folder of the UI project. As you can see, it inherits from view model base, and it takes an ID and a display_member as constructor parameters. The ID is directly stored in this ID property, and the display_member string is stored in this display_member property. And as you can see, that display_member property is raising the property changed event in the setter by using the onPropertyChanged method that is inherited from the view model base class. Now we can go to our navigation view model and we can use that new class. So I change here the observable collection of lookup_item to observable collection of navigation_item view model. I also change the selected friend property to be of type navigation_item view model. Now when I scroll up a bit, you can see that it's still red here because the friend lookup service returns lookup items. Now here we just need to create a new navigation_item view model, and we can pass the ID and the display_member of the lookup item to the navigation_item view model's constructor. When I scroll up, there is still something red here, where we initialize the observable collection. Now this is an observable collection of navigation_item view models. As we have exactly the same property names on the navigation_item view model as we have in the lookup_item class, we don't need to change the data bindings in the user interface. So now let's run the application again and let's see if it works. I changed the name back to Thomas from Thomas Claudius and I click Save. Now the breakpoint is hit in the after friend saved method. I remove the breakpoint and I continue. And now you see the navigation has updated. Let's try it again. Let's change it to Thomas Claudius and let's hit Save. And now you see the navigation is immediately updated after the friend has been saved. Now we are done with saving friends in the Friend Organizer application. Let's wrap up what you have learned in this module. In this module, you have learned about the iCommand interface and how it is used in the MVVM pattern. We have added a Save Command property to the Friend Detail View model that is used by a button in the Friend Detail View. When the Save command is executed, we save the friend with Entity Framework in the Friend Data Service. So we are done now with saving friends in the Friend Organizer application. Or maybe we only think we are done. When you allow the user to change the data and to save it back to the database, you should validate the user input. And this is what we do in the next module. Welcome to the module Validating User Input. My name is Thomas Claudius Huber. In the Friend Organizer application, we can already save friends back to the database, but so far we don't validate what the user has entered. And this is what we do in this module. As usual, let's take a quick look at the module outline. You learn in this module about validation in WPF. Then you will learn how to validate the user input by implementing the iNotifyDataError.info interface. You will also learn how to display errors by using an error template. After you have built this basic validation logic, you will refactor it into a base class that you can reuse. Then you will extend it and you will build the logic to validate the data annotations that we have already on the model classes of our Friend Organizer application. With all this validation in place, we can enable and disable the Save button in the Friend Organizer application. Only if there is no validation error, the Save button is enabled. Now, before we start with validation in WPF, let's see what happens when we save a friend without a first name. The first name property has the required data annotation, so it's a not nullable column in the database.